Tonight on Reel to Reel, we'll bring you coverage of the installation of the 7th Bishop of Wilmington, Delaware.
And we'll also have a chance to speak with him here in our studio. Hello, I'm Father Dave McGowan.
And I'm Isabel Garvey-LaGrosse. Welcome to Reel to Reel.
Good evening. The Diocese of Wilmington, our neighbor to the south, covers over 5,000 square miles of Delaware and along the eastern shore of Maryland and Virginia.
There are 56 parishes and an estimated 128,000 Catholics in an area that is rich in tradition and history. And that history was added to recently with the installation of the 7th Bishop of the Diocese.
He's the Most Reverend Robert E. Mulvey, and tonight he's our very special guest on Reel to Reel. Before we meet him, we're going to travel to Wilmington to witness some of the ceremonies which installed him as the Bishop of Wilmington.
In presenting my credentials here tonight, I commit myself wholeheartedly to a ministry of service among you.
Hundreds filled St. Peter's Cathedral on West Street in Wilmington for the April 10th ceremony in which Bishop Robert Mulvey presented his credentials to the officials and people of his diocese. Following opening prayers by Archbishop William Borders of Baltimore,
"For yours is the power and the glory, now and forever. Amen."
The credentials ceremony began. The diocesan consultors, those officials charged with running the diocese since the death last May of Bishop Thomas Mardica, examined and signed the papers brought by Bishop Mulvey, indicating that he had the power and authority from the Holy Father to assume the bishop's throne in Wilmington. The occasion was a first for Wilmington. Never before had the document ceremony taken place in public. Bishop Mulvey was no stranger to what was taking place. He had performed the ceremony many times himself as the chancellor of his former diocese, Manchester, New Hampshire. Then, in the spirit of Eastertide, the cathedral lights went down, and a single flame from the Paschal candle was used to light candles held by everyone in attendance.
We are the light of Christ, and our light must illuminate. It cannot be hidden.
In his first official act, the new bishop led the congregation in a renewal of commitment.
And I, for my part, am resolved to shepherd the Church of Wilmington with faith and love.
When the lights came back up, Bishop Mulvey delivered his homily, stressing the themes of Easter and light.
We are to be the light of Christ in every city and town in the Diocese of Wilmington, in every school, in every factory, in every office and boardroom. We're to be the light of Christ at every collective bargaining table, in all the legislative hearings. We're to be the light of Christ in the locker rooms and in the beauty parlors and around our own kitchen tables. We're to be the light of Christ everywhere. And each one of us tonight, beginning with myself, can and should pause and ask, how brightly does my light shine? We are the only image of the risen Lord that these people will ever see. What a sobering thought. But what a challenge. That's why I've come to the cathedral tonight. That's why you've come to the cathedral tonight. We've all come here for exactly the same reason, to take our light from Christ. I am absolutely delighted to be here. I belong here. I now belong to the Diocese of Wilmington, and I want you to know that I'm glad to be part of it.
The next day at St. Elizabeth's Church, the installation ceremony took place. Once again, the church was filled to capacity, and attending were 61 bishops and archbishops. During the Mass, Archbishop Borders of Baltimore formally asked Bishop Mulvey if he would accept the diocese as his own.
You are called by the Holy Spirit in the church to serve Almighty God and the people of the Diocese of Wilmington in faith and love as their shepherd? Are you willing to accept this diocese in the tradition of the apostolic faith of our church?
With faith in our Lord Jesus Christ and with the love of God in my heart, I do accept the pastoral care of the people of God in the Diocese of Wilmington, and I resolve to serve faithfully the church of this diocese.
And then Bishop Mulvey assumed the major symbol of his new office, the cathedra, or bishop's chair. After the final blessing, Bishop Robert Mulvey left the cathedral to begin a new chapter in the history of the Diocese of Wilmington.
Good evening. Robert Mulvey was born in 1930 in Boston, Massachusetts. In 1957, he became Father Mulvey in Louvain, Belgium. After a few years of parish work, he was sent to Rome for graduate studies and consequently was there for the Second Vatican Council. He was named Chancellor of the Diocese of Manchester, New Hampshire in 1972, and in 1977, he became Bishop Mulvey when he was named the first auxiliary of that diocese. On February 19th of this year, he was named the 7th Bishop of the Diocese of Wilmington, Delaware. Bishop Mulvey, welcome to the Delaware Valley and welcome to Reel to Reel.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you.
Bishop, you were born in Boston. How did you come to serve in the Diocese of Manchester in New Hampshire?
Well, that's a little bit of a famous story now. I went to a public high school of commerce, and didn't decide to be a priest until my senior year. And in those days, you needed Latin to get in the seminary. So I went to a place called Newman Preparatory, where you could do 3 years of Latin in 1 year. And Archbishop Cushing, who was the Archbishop at that time, was a friend of the headmaster, and he came down to talk to us. There were 26 of us in the class, all, of course, preparing to go into the seminary. And the Archbishop gave us a talk and said that, well, if I were you guys, I wouldn't study for Boston. We got more priests than we'll ever need. You won't be pastors for 30 years. You know, go to some place that needs you. So of the 26, there were 22 of us who went to other dioceses. And I applied for Los Angeles. I had met the auxiliary bishop, who's now Cardinal Manning. And I applied to La Crosse, Wisconsin. The bishop there was a classmate of the curate in my parish. And I applied to Manchester, New Hampshire, because the pastor of my parish was a friend of Bishop Brady. I was accepted by all 3, and I went to Manchester. When the chips were down, I figured, well, that was missionary enough to go over to New Hampshire. And years later, when I was Master of Ceremonies to Bishop Primo, I went down to a meeting in Boston. He was Cardinal then. Always used to greet us at the door, and he was a great friend of Bishop Primo's, but the two of them always used to like to needle each other. And he said to Bishop Primo, how did you ever end up in New Hampshire? That's the way he referred to it for me. So Bishop Primo, not to be outdone, said, tell him. So I told him the story I just told you. And the Cardinal said, you missed the whole point. And I said, what was the point? He said, I wanted you to go to China. So I told him I was very happy I'd gone to Manchester, that China had never entered any of our minds.
Well, you went to Manchester as a stranger, and now you're
Yes.
coming into Wilmington as a stranger as well. How does this experience, how's this experience similar with your first assignment, and how's it different?
Well, it's different. It's different. In 1957, when you were appointed as associate pastor, very few things ended up on your desk. Now, as the Bishop of Wilmington, everything's ended up on my desk, I think. So that's the difference. The similarity, of course, is I was going to a state that I didn't know. I had never lived there, of course, before I studied, went into the seminary. The only priests I knew were the ones that I had studied with in Canada and in Belgium. So it was a whole new ball game for me, and just getting to know the priests in the area where I was assigned was just time consuming. And then when I went into the chancery after I got back from Rome, I was appointed Master of Ceremonies to Bishop Primo, and I went with him all over the diocese on pastoral visitations. And I was with him for 13 years in that capacity. So I got to know New Hampshire by going around, talking to the priests, talking to the people, getting to know their religious women and men. And so it was a long process. And I think as I come here to Wilmington, part of my anxiety, of course, was that I would like to know Wilmington like I knew New Hampshire. And I knew every priest by first name, and I knew every town and area of the state. Of course, here I don't know anything, and with the exception of Bishop Burke, I had never known anyone in the whole Delmarva Peninsula until the night I was appointed. So I think, you know, from the human point of view, I trust that I'll get to know the new diocese like I got to know Manchester by going around, visiting everywhere.
We're going to be right back. Please stay with us. Bishop Mulvey is not the only church leader making the news this week. On Wednesday, it was announced that Archbishop John J. O'Connor of New York will be elevated to the College of Cardinals. A native of Philadelphia, Archbishop O'Connor served many years in the military vicariate before being named Bishop of Scranton. And last year, he was named Archbishop of New York. The new cardinal will receive his red hat during ceremonies in Rome on May 25th. We'll have more about the Archbishop and his appointment on Reel to Reel in upcoming weeks. Welcome back. We're interviewing Bishop Robert Mulvey. Bishop Mulvey, when you presented your credentials at the Diocese of Wilmington, you stated that it was your desire to continue the mission of the diocese. How would you describe that mission?
I think the mission of any diocese is to bring the good news. And I continued that theme at the installation when I said that all of us had to give witness to the good news by being living gospels. And I think the mission of the diocese is when the bishop and the priests, the women and men religious and the lay people all see themselves as living gospels and working together to give that image to the community of Christ. I think that basically is what I would envision it as.
How do you define your role as the Bishop of Wilmington?
Well, I think as the Bishop of Wilmington, I think I would be a teacher first. I would hope I would be a sign of unity. I think I would hope that that would be perhaps the one thing I would like the people in the diocese to see, so that the unity doesn't have to be uniformity, I don't mean that, but all of the gifts in the diocese that so many people have, all of the talents, all they have to contribute. I would like to be a person that kind of draws that out and makes us all see ourselves as one family working for the same mission. So a unifying person, I think. And reflecting Christ, of course, in my own life. But that's a given, I think.
And what do you see your role as teacher being?
I think teacher is to teach the doctrine of the church, those things that, you know, are part of our faith. But also, I think, teaching by what we do. I think that's very important. I think calling the hard questions. I think that's part of teaching, asking those hard questions that will cause people to think. I think going around at all of the functions and by using the newspaper to the dialogue, I think all of these are tools for teaching. And then I think one-on-one. You have to teach one-on-one. Encourage everyone else to do it.
In New Hampshire, you were on the Liturgical Commission and the Pastoral Commission as well.
Yes.
How did your experience on these commissions prepare you to accept these responsibilities in Delaware?
I think anyone who's been on any committee or commission, I think the one thing you learn very quickly is how to listen. I think anyone who's on a committee, you don't have any trouble talking. The difficulty is how to listen. And I think that was the greatest thing I learned from all the commissions that I've served on, that you have to give as much thought to what the other person is saying as you give to what you're about to say. There's a tendency with all of us, I think without exception, to kind of wait till you're finished. I'm not really listening to you, I'm preparing my answer already. And that's very important. So that, you know, when the tough questions came up, you know, I'd give an answer which I thought was, of course, the most enlightened answer since the beginning of the world, and then someone would shoot you down. Say, well, at the beginning you would lick your wounds. Then suddenly, when someone else gave a brilliant statement, I shot it down. And little by little you began to learn that you were there to affirm each other and to listen. Now, maybe there was a gem in there that I hadn't thought of. So that was the learning experience for me on the committees. I think that helped me to be a better person, a better priest, and eventually, I hope, a better bishop.
And Bishop, one could assume that your experience on these commissions, where you did learn to listen to the input of the individual members, will also be helpful in dealing with the parishes, as each individual parish contributes to the diocese. What is your vision for the parishes in Wilmington?
Well, I think the parishes is where it's all at. I mean, you know, each parish is unique, but each parish has the same mission. And that's a more manageable area. In other words, I'd love to be a pastor of a parish because I think you can reach out more to people and see it through. As a bishop, I'll be passing from one parish to another, but if I can just leave that sense that I'm very interested in your parish being the best parish in this diocese, and then go to your parish and say the same thing, and yet there's no competition except competition for excellence. That's, but the parish is where the people live, and their lives, and their sorrows, and their joys, and everything is so evident. And so the Diocese of Wilmington is just 55 parishes. That's a bigger family, you know. And then, of course, all the specialized ministries. I know that part of the great work of the church is done there too. But in answer specifically to your question, I would see the parishes as being witnesses of Christ and doing it very well given the circumstances of their community.
Bishop Mulvey in Rome, Pope John Paul has made it his practice that whenever he has a free Sunday, he goes to one of his parishes and meets the people there. Mm-hmm. Do you have any plans to have a special way of getting acquainted with your new parishes? Well,
you should see my schedule. I think but I approved it. Yeah, I started right last week, and I went to all the parishes in the furthest most part of the diocese, in the southern part of the diocese in Pocomoke City, and Westover, and Salisbury, and Seaford. So I'm going to do that now every weekend. This weekend I'm going down to the shore, to Rehoboth Beach. But then what I started is to go to parishes in the city when I don't have a schedule Mass. Rather than say Mass at the house, what I'm doing, and the people seem to have received it very well, I'm going to go to a local parish church in Wilmington. Just say the Mass. There's no announcement for a big fanfare or anything like that, but just go. If there's 20 people there that normally go, I say Mass for the 20 people, and then I'm going to have breakfast in the rectory with the priest, and then go to the office from there. So that's another way that I want to get to see Wilmington. And I hope between all the ceremonies throughout the state of Delaware and the Eastern Shore of Maryland, then concentrating on Wilmington, the greater Wilmington area, that I'll be able to hit a great portion of the diocese really by July 1st.
We're going to take a break right now,
okay.
But don't go away, there's more coming up.
Pope John Paul II has praised the Catholic press for its truth in witnessing to the faith. In Philadelphia, its suburbs, and the Allentown area, the Catholic Standard and Times serves the needs of the Catholic community by providing regular, accurate, and detailed information about your church. Keep up with the weekly news and features that shape your world. Subscribe to the Catholic Standard and Times. For more information, call 587-3666.
Welcome back. Our guest is Bishop Robert Mulvey of Wilmington Diocese. Bishop, the rising cost of Catholic education is a concern to us all. And as a boy, you couldn't afford Catholic education. What do you see as the future for our Catholic schools?
I think the Catholic school future is very, very bright. I think it's always been one of the great glories of the Church in the United States, envied by all over the world. And I think the people today, as in other generations, are rising to the challenge. They're making tremendous sacrifices from the family point of view to see to it that their children have the Catholic education. So I really think it's very, very bright. Now, the concerns are real, and you'd have to be very naive not to face them. But I think they're being faced, and I think it's bright.
Now, the Catholic schools need support, obviously, from the family, but they also need support from the parish. How do you see the parish's role in Catholic education?
Well, I think when the parish works together with this as one of their primary goals, I think that's how the funds are raised, that people who have children in school, of course, are going to have a personal interest, but those who have been the beneficiaries of Catholic education, I think also have a responsibility to share of their means to see to it that others get what perhaps I didn't get. That's something I think that, and I think they're responding to that. Now, Wilmington, we're very blessed. We have over 30 schools, and I hope the future's very bright for Wilmington.
And as a follow-up to that question, the issue of tuition tax credit has received a great deal of attention lately. What is your position on that question?
I'm very strong for it. When I was in New Hampshire, I went to Washington personally and saw all the United States senators and congressmen from New Hampshire and pushed very hard for it. So I think that's I think we should have it. I believe that.
Bishop, while you were a student in Rome, you had the advantage of being on hand for the Second Vatican Council.
Yes.
This coming fall, Pope John Paul has issued a call for an extraordinary synod on the 20th anniversary of the Council to study its effects and to take a look at to celebrate what the Council has done for the Church. What do you think the Council has done mostly for the Church?
I think it has made all of us more conscious of the fact that each one of us, without exception, is part of the Church. We're the people of God. We're all gifted. We all share in the ministry of service to the world. And I think that's raised our consciousness. I think that's been the great, and to causing all of us to look at ourselves and ask the hard question, am I committed to the gospel message? I think that's made us do that.
The Council opened the door on ecumenism.
Yes. And
while you were in New England, you were a leader in ecumenical affairs. Do you think there's doors yet to be opened in ecumenism?
Oh, yes. I think there's a long way to go. I think over these past few years, we've got to know each other. We've got to work together on many common projects. But in New England, we had already begun to talk about those things that divide us as well. And I think those are, when you've created the good atmosphere of trust and sharing, then you can begin to discuss those questions. And I think that's very important. But I think ecumenism has a very good future, and I want to be involved in it.
Do you intend, consequently, to be active in ecumenical affairs in the Delmarva area?
I hope so. I've got a lot of invitations already from the various denominations to go and speak, and I'm going to try to accept all of them that I can. So yes, I would hope. And they've shown a great interest in my being a part of the ecumenical scene. Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Another important area of the Council was its opening of the door to the laity to a more and fuller participation in the life of the Church. How do you hope to bring that into being, more into being in the Wilmington Diocese?
Well, a marvelous beginning was made by Bishop Mulvey, just extraordinary, and I hope to build on what he has done. And one point on that, I think we have to remember that people forget. When the lay people were called from the council to do the work of the church, the seminaries were filled. We never had as many priests or religious. That's the moment they asked for the lay people. So this business of the laity are going to fill, because we now have a priest shortage and a sister shortage, but as soon as that's over, you know, that's not the message of the council. Mm-hmm. And that's not my goal.
Bishop, when people come to the end of their career, they're always eulogized in some way or another. And sometimes it's helpful to think how we want to be remembered. It gives direction for how we are. We hope that you're going to be around for years and years to come. But when it comes time for you to be remembered, how do you want to be remembered?
That's, well, my motto was, I come as one who serves. And so I suppose when the journey's over, if everyone can say, he did his best to serve.
Thank you,
That
Bishop.
would be a good remembrance.
Well, thank you, Bishop. It's been a pleasure having you with us here today.
Delighted to be with both of you.
And we'll hope you'll be back.
Invite me. I'd love to come back.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
We were glad to have this opportunity to welcome Bishop Mulvey to the Delaware Valley area.
And we're sure that you join Bell and me in wishing the bishop, along with the people of his diocese, great success and a long career here. Next week on Reel to Reel, we'll travel around Philadelphia with a visiting boys choir from Avila, Spain.
We'll meet a priest who became a father through adoption.
And we'll look back at some of the outstanding young people we featured in our youth profile segment.
Mike Gallagher will be by with another arts review.
And Father Tom Legere will share his insights into our relationships. Don't forget to send your comments to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, room 907, Philadelphia, PA 19103.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.
Good night, and remember, Jesus is Lord.